what's going on, y'all? T-Bob here.
And Jake as well.
And you're about to watch a little OTB LSU.
We're going to give you all the latest, greatest between LSU football, baseball, women's basketball, softball, and everything in between.
Bottom line, if you want to talk Tigers, keep it locked, subscribe, like it, and we hope you enjoy it. Let's go ahead and dive into some LSU Cruton news. First off, we'll start with just like these are little tidbits that Taylor put in here that I wanted to touch on. Well, did I lose? Oh, okay, here it is. Out of the portal, LSU's hosting Mississippi State wide receiver Xavier Thomas. This is one of the top targets out of the portal for LSU. He is a receiver and return specialist. Okay, Aaron Anderson didn't work. Let's try once again. And look, Xavier Thomas is a John Ehret, so he's a Louisiana native. He went to Mississippi State in 2022. Didn't really play, 2 catches, 4 yards. But last season, 40 grabs, 503 yards, and 1 touchdown. Now, you may be saying, well, T-Bob, that's not really that much to write home about. Well, let's be clear. Catching 40 balls for 500 yards in Mississippi State's offense this year, that's basically like Malik Neighbors numbers right there, right? That is water in the desert sort of numbers. So Xavier Thomas is currently one of the top targets of this LSU staff, and I think it's a good sell. Come on home. And as we've seen more and more and more, you can never have enough good receivers. You know, look at how Alabama created some of their elite teams recently. Look at the difference in a team like Penn State versus some of the teams they lost to. Just no threat on the outside. Look at the success that having Brian Thomas, Malik Neighbors leads to when you talk about combining them with someone like Jaden Daniels. And, well, the benefits are easy to see. So hopefully we'll be seeing some news on Xavier Thomas soon. Anything to add there, Taylor?
Yeah, so the thing about Xavier Thomas that may not show up when you're looking at his pure receiving stats, it's his return numbers, which is what LSU desperately needs. I mean, the guy has almost 400 punt return yards the last 2 seasons, 300 kick return yards, has a touchdown in each. I mean, let's look what he did in the Mississippi State game. Keep in mind, the A&M game. Mississippi State lost that game 51-10, but, I mean, he made plays. He had 2 returns for 115 yards and a touchdown in that game. Damn. LSU has not had a decent returner in like 4 years now, so I think that's going to be his role more than anything. I mean, if you remember, they bring in Aaron Anderson last year for this spot. It immediately doesn't work out for whatever reason. I mean, I think he's going to be more of a return specialist here.
And yeah, hopefully, you know, third time's a charm. I don't know. It's got to work eventually, right? Even though it seems like LSU may be a bit cursed when you think back, and the guy who failed originally was Malik Neighbors, which is kind of wild to think about now with where he's done since that Florida State game. In some recruiting news, the 2025 class for LSU is one that people are very excited about. It's a far way off, so I'm not too excited. But there was kind of an interesting little tidbit. As a 5-star Alabama commit, Ryan Williams was the top receiver in the class. He just reclassified in 2024, meaning 5-star wide receiver DeCorian Moore from Duncanville, Texas, who is currently committed to LSU, is now the number 1 wide receiver in the entire class. He's the number 4 prospect in the country. And if LSU ends up landing him, long way away, it would be the highest ranked wide receiver the program has ever signed. Anything to add there before we get to, I mean, I don't really, 2025 is a long way off, but somewhat, I think somewhat interested for people that you could get the top guy in the country.
Yeah, he's a good player. Tall, lean, wide receiver. Look, Duncanville has stars all over. Caden Durham, who's on his way to LSU, he plays at Duncanville. Colin Simmons, the number 1 player in the country right now, he plays at Duncanville. I mean, he is used to playing with high-profile players, which he will here, and he might actually be the best player on that offense. That includes a Caden Durham. That includes all these talented guys. So while he's only a junior, he's putting up big-time numbers in these big-time games out in Texas.
And then finally, in some 2024 news, and we're going to dive into the 24 class here, but in some 2024 news, LSU flips a big-time commit. Defensive lineman Gabriel Relaford. He's a number 4 prospect in Louisiana. He was a Texas A&M commit. He has now flipped to LSU. And importantly, when he decommitted from Texas A&M, the two schools that he was going to decide between, LSU and USC. For me, this is a big symbolic win for LSU because, as you know, I'm a bit nervous about LSU going into this modern era of recruiting when it comes to some of the NIL disadvantages that they appear to have. And that's what we're going to kind of explore right here. But he was a big priority. Okay, you flip him from A&M, you keep him from SC, and he's kind of viewed as maybe the icing on the cake for the 2024 class, which is now up to 27 commits. But it begs the question, how should you feel about the 2024 class for LSU? You are 12th in the country right now. You have 27 commits, like we said. You've done a good job with Louisiana. You have 10 of the top 12 players in the state committed to you. The only players you're missing are Dominic McKinley, who is currently the second-ranked player in the state. He is committed to Texas A&M. And, of course, Wardell Mack, the corner. God, it seems like he would be just perfect for what LSU needs right now, but he is committed to Texas. But still, 10 of top 12. That's essentially, I would say, putting up the walls around the state that every LSU coach needs to try to do. But it gets complicated because 12th is good for a lot of schools. It's kind of subpar for LSU. LSU's used to being closer to top 5 and at least in the top 10. And as you know, I don't look at individual recruits. I look at aggregate rankings. I think they do have value, and you want to be in that top 10 if you're trying to win national championship. But maybe more damning than being ranked 12th in the country is you're 7th in the SEC now. When you look at both Texas and Oklahoma joining, you are currently behind Georgia, Alabama, Florida, Texas, Oklahoma, and the Auburn Tigers when it comes to that 24 class. So 12th in the country is good. 7th in the SEC, that's not quite going to cut it over time, in my opinion. Before we get into these NIL numbers, how do y'all, because Taylor, I don't know about you, Mara, I don't think you like recruiting too much. I know Taylor generally follows it way closer than I do. How do you feel about this 24 class?
I don't look at star rankings. It's, did you fill your positions of need? Getting a Relaford, Texas A&M, that is a position of need. We talked about the defensive line. Mason Smith was underwhelming this year. Makai Wingo, what's he going to do? What's his future going to look like? You lose Jordan Jefferson, who was your best defensive tackle. So getting in guys in the trenches like that, I like. You need a lot more DBs in this class, though. You just mentioned Wardell Mack would be huge for this class. He wants to take his talents to Texas for whatever reason. But
well, I think I know the reason, which we'll get into.
But yeah, but you get some more DBs in this class. I feel good about it. You got a lot of talent at receiver already, and you're bringing in some talent there. You're bringing in a Caden Durham to add to your running back room. What are they going to do at quarterback? Are they going to go to the transfer portal? We know Colin Hurley's coming in, who's really talented. So while I think there are some significant spots you need to fill, the guys they have now really do fill needs for LSU. So like while you're not ranked as high, I think you have a good collection of guys that could come in and help.
Okay, so maybe not star chasing. Again, I mean, I still don't know, though, if I can champion the positional recruiting when how much help are you getting in the secondary in this class as it stands
that's
currently?
the big issue. Like,
yeah, that's what I'm
you got to
saying.
get help there.
And that's also the most glaring issue on LSU. Though I do think they like Toviano and Ashton Stamps, what they saw out of them this year, but you still need depth. I mean, right, this year proved that more so than anything. You can't, if you can't have enough wide receivers, you really cannot have enough DBs. Like you just can't. Look at Alabama. How they've been so successful. Look at Georgia. Look at where you have fallen off and what that's translated to. So you're 12th in the country. You got no 5 stars, which, whatever. LSU generally doesn't do good with 5 stars anyway. They're fairly good at developing 4 and 3. I like that 27 number. That's a big number. So to Taylor's point, kind of still continuing to recoup some of those original roster losses and fatten up the roster just from a pure number standpoint. But where it gets most interesting to me is this is a class, or LSU right now has an average NIL evaluation of 61K. And if you look around the country, Miami and Oregon are the only schools kind of comparable to that, ahead of them at 62K. And, well, Let me look something up. Oh, God. I'm just going to, I want to go down this road, but I'm going to be completely, this is just going to have to be a completely honest moment. I think I have an entire segment that I thought was very good that just blew up in my face with a moment of realization. Do we know with On 3, the average NIL valuation, Taylor, maybe you can help me out here. Is that what LSU is? Are that what these schools are spending? Or is that the valuation of what the players are thought to be worth? Or is there even a discernible difference between the two? Because if that's what a player worth, that's what they're making. Yeah,
I kind of think it's what you said there. Like,
okay,
one kind of directly correlates to the other. But if you look at On 3, like when you look at On 3, before a guy even commits, they do like a projected NIL value of each individual player as well.
Sorry, I had a moment of panic there. But yeah, okay, so it is what they are. It is what they are thought to be worth. But obviously, if you're thought to be worth that, somebody's going to pay you that. Okay, so right now, LSU has an average NIL valuation of $61K. Miami and Oregon are the only schools comparable to LSU that are ahead of it. Miami's at $62K. Oregon's at $69K. Here's where it gets a bit scary and where LSU looks like this is my long-term fear here. Have you all looked at the top 5 recruiting class and their valuations? At 5, you got Florida, currently averaging $120,000. You have FSU at number 4, $117,000. Alabama at 3, $132,000. Ohio State at 2, $131,000. And then UGA at number 1 with 28 commits and an average NIL valuation of $140,000. In fact, there are only 6 schools with that average over $100K, and Texas is the only school not in the top 5, and it's only because they have a limited number of recruits. I think they're 8th in the entire country. And so the correlation between monetary resources and where you're going to finish on the recruiting trail feels pretty damn obvious at this point. And in the case of LSU, maybe slightly damning. How do you out-recruit teams when they can literally spend double what you do? Right? What do you say? You're at 61,000. So Florida's W at 120, FSU's basically double at 117, Bama's way over W at 131, same thing with Ohio State, 131, UGA 140. Like over the long term, how do you keep pace? Isn't this the whole reason why all this conference realignment is taking place? Why schools want so desperately out of the ACC even before this most recent ACC drama? Because here they sit and they're like, wait, how am I supposed to, like if we're all supposed to do the Power 5, how am I supposed to compete with the Big Ten and the SEC when they're getting $80 million payouts a year and I'm getting $30 million payouts a year? It's just not feasible. Well, how am I supposed to compete with the teams I'm recruiting against when they can pay guys or have the resources to pay double what I do? Now, we're still early on in all of this. These valuations, you could say, are still sketchy. And like we said, right, just because they're saying what a player is worth does not mean that's what he's actually getting paid. Who knows? Like, this is all a very inexact science still at this point. But these early data points, these early returns, I don't love them. They kind of feel like a harbinger of maybe potential bad things to come. Again, it doesn't feel great when the top 5 are all nearly double what you're currently able to spend. And for what it's worth, though, or I should say this, in defense of LSU, for what it's worth, if you look at, okay, who else is in your neighborhood spending-wise? First off, you are beating a few schools who are above you, and you still are pretty much out-recruiting everyone who's in that 60K sort of zone, except for, as I said, Oregon, Miami, and Oklahoma. I don't know what the future holds. Well, we will have to wait and see, but like this is why you hired Brian Kelly, to have to try to coach his way through some potential major deficiencies. I mean, again, does it surprise anyone that Alabama, Ohio State, and UGA have the most talent in the country. Alabama, Ohio State, and UGA are the teams every single year that are, right there in the top 4 in terms of rankings, playoffs, all that sort of stuff. And Alabama, UGA, and Ohio State are spending the most money out of anyone. You got to hope to be like Michigan, right? Who they're more in your range. They don't have like, to your point, Taylor, Michigan would be the blueprint for LSU, given that they don't really star chase. Their blue chip ratio is barely above the 50% threshold that we say you have to win a national championship, and yet they are still finding ways to be there in the end. And that's a credit to Harbaugh and what he's put together. And you could say Stallions and all that, but we'll see. That's what LSU is going to need to try to replicate, because I do not think you're going to be able to keep up financially. Wow, Jake, what incredible takes.
I mean, those guys, they're just the best.
I think so. And if you think so, again, hit the like button, subscribe, ring the bell so you get notifications when we post every single day here on OTB LSU.